Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right. It's great to be with you here in this, our first show after the election, the primary last Tuesday. This is Mike Alexander, and I'm here with my broadcasting partner, Jonathan Wilson, who is also the editor of the Taxpayer Gazette. Welcome, Jonathan.
Yeah, good to be here. Our 20th episode.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we've watched our numbers increase steadily. This is, of course, citizen-sponsored radio, which means two things. First and foremost, we want you to participate. We'll try to provide more opportunities for that tonight than in the past, or that is over the last couple of weekends, and you can reach us at 866-870-5752. Second thing, of course, is that we need your financial support, and we're delighted that that's been increasing. It is, of course, nowhere near the level that it really needs to be for all of our benefits as we come together, but you can contribute to us by going where, Jonathan?
RadioFreeLosAngeles.net. And I want to thank John from South Pasadena, who made a nice contribution this afternoon.
Thank you, John. We do appreciate it. Now, on tonight's episode, we're very fortunate to have a guest tonight, Victor Davis Hanson. I'm sure that he is known to most of you. We're trying to get him on the radio here in just a few minutes. We hope to have him up and available, and then we'll do an introduction on the on his biography when we get that. I'm not sure how long the professor will be able to spend with us, but in fact, we're going to ask him that question directly right now. Dr. Hanson, are you there? Hello? Dr. Victor Davis Hanson, are you? Oh, I'm waiting for the engineer here to return to his quarters. Kevin, can you put Dr. Hanson through? All right. Dr. Hanson, are you there now, sir?
Yes, I am.
Hey, very good. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to welcome Victor David Hanson to Radio Free Los Angeles. We've named our show here, I think, with tongue-in-cheek, but aptly so, because we are, as with the entire state here, in a very left-wing dominant society and a political environment, and we have a very rich opportunity here to bring conservative ideas to bear. I don't know if you heard our introduction or not, but our focus here, Doctor, is free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government, the old themes. We're very pleased that you could come on with us tonight, and we would like to discuss with you your take on last week's elections here in California, number one, and number two, whether you think that there is anything in those developments that augur well at all for the future of California. But first, I'd like to introduce you a little bit to our audience. This is Dr. Hanson. As I recall, I'm speaking from memory now, you graduated from University of Santa Cruz back in 1975, later took a Ph.D. in classics from Stanford, and then taught classics and I also believe military history for many, many years in the California State College system. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is.
And since then, you've been writing and speaking and appearing. I think we could consume the better part of a half an hour just talking about your bibliography, including a number of my favorite books of yours that I've read, The Soul of Battle, Mexifornia, and one that I'm working through right now, The World Wars, and I'd love to talk to you about that one of these times. Tonight, however, our major focus here is on the elections of the past week. What is your take on it, Doctor?
Well, I think it's somewhat encouraging if you're a conservative, and that there is a conservative on the ticket for Governor, John Cox, and that will bring out some people who are conservative that were discouraged. And it is true that if they're going to take back the House, the Democrats are going to have to pick up a lot of seats in California.
They will.
And I'm not sure they're going to pick up enough. I mean, here where we are in the center of the state, there was a big outside effort to unseat Devin Nunes, and a Democratic candidate had almost $2 million in outside funds, and although Donald Trump carried his district by 10 points, Nunes was reelected. I mean, he won the primary by 26 points.
Yes.
Meanwhile, in the 16th congressional district, we have a seven-term Democrat, Jim Costa. Hillary Clinton won that 16th district, it's mostly Fresno, by 21 points in 2016, and yet a one-time candidate, his first election, 32-year-old Elizabeth Heng, she's a child of Cambodian refugees, Stanford student body president, she came within 2,000 votes of beating Jim Costa.
Yeah, that is amazing. Costa's been a powerhouse for years up there.
Yeah, so they're going to square off in the finals. So there's and I could repeat, there's races like that, and what it reflects, I think, is that whatever one's political ideology is, that people are starting to understand slowly that they pay the highest electricity rates in the country, they pay the highest gasoline prices, they have the highest gasoline taxes, they have the highest sales taxes, they now have probably the highest income taxes, and yet when they look at what they get for that, they have the highest housing prices, they have schools that are rated about 46 in the nation test scores, they have an infrastructure that Forbes magazine has rated 49th in the country in terms of bridges and roads and airports.
Yes.
So they're not getting services from the government that take so much, and they want to know why. And the answer is that we have about 40% of the nation's illegal immigrants. We're a sanctuary state. We've lost about 4 million upper middle class entrepreneurial people the last 20 years, and we used to spend about 7% of our budget on Medicaid, Medi-Cal, and now it's about a third.
Yes. And
we have an enormous impoverished population. About 1/3 of the nation's welfare recipients live in California. 1/5 of the state lives below the poverty line, and yet we have a billionaire class or millionaire class along the coast.
Yep.
So we have an asymmetrical state of very wealthy and very poor. The middle class is leaving. And I think some of the wannabe middle class people are starting to see they can't afford their electricity rates. They can't afford to buy a home. And if they pay so high sales tax, and they want to know what's going on.
Yes.
And they're taking a different look, in other words, at things like teachers' unions, state pensions, welfare, open borders, sanctuary cities, high-speed rail. They want to know why you can get killed on the 99 and it's only 4 lanes in places like Delano or Tulare, and it hasn't changed in 60 years, and yet they haven't laid 1 foot of rail, and we've already spent over $13 billion on high-speed rail.
Exactly. Yeah, the level of corruption in government is well known to persons like you and I, or me, whatever the correct grammar is, the pronoun is there, is very obvious to you. But this is starting to become apparent to, shall we say, the average voter. We in the California Taxpayers Union spent a lot of time talking about the fiscal crisis that is confronting this state. And just to amplify one of your points there, on top of everything else, we have not only a political elite, but a public employee and public union member elite that have garnered for themselves incredible salaries and benefits and have expanded at the local level to the point where, in my view, almost every city and county in the state of California is insolvent. And they've been publishing phony numbers given out by the by CalPERS or by the University of California Retirement System or by CalSTRS, the California State Retirement Teachers System. And those numbers there severely understate the amount of those pensions. And if these cities paid them off or taxed at the level necessary, we would do very little else in these cities except pay for past services. It is just astonishing.
Yeah, and I think people realize that because of that overhead, that despite high taxes, if you go into the Department of Motor Vehicles or the local social services office or the county zoning commissioner's office, you don't get very good service. And one of the reasons you don't is that there's such an overhead on pensions that the state doesn't have the money to hire and train adequate employees. And second, when your schools are rated 46 in the country, public schools, and over half of the entering students in the California State University system have to be remediated in math and English, then you don't have a pool of an educated workforce that can really service the state.
Right.
And I think people are understanding now that if you talk to Californians off the record, they just say things like, I try to avoid the DMV like the plague.
Dr. Hanson, we have a little break now. Will you be able to stay with us for a little bit?
Yeah, I can stay for about 10 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Mike Alexander, Radio Free Los Angeles, back in just a few minutes.
If you'd like to talk with Radio Free Los Angeles, the phone lines are wide open. 866-870-KRLA. That's 866-870-5752. We're live, local, and here to talk with you. 866-870-KRLA.
All right, Mike Alexander, Jonathan Wilson back here with our special guest tonight, Dr. Victor Davis Hanson. We've been talking about the results of the election, the problems of California, and the forecast. In the 10 minutes that you have available to us, this is a very short time to talk about fixes. Are you optimistic in any way? And what is it that you see as being the key step or steps necessary to restore California, if you believe that we can accomplish this?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to depend on the Latino middle class. If it's 40% of the state is Latino, and they've been taken for granted by the Democratic establishment on the theory that they would always support open borders and ever more social programs. And yet, illegal immigration in the Central Valley, to take one example, impacts the public schools and Hispanic communities. It threatens the security or the safety of many neighborhoods, and it makes it much harder to do business if you're a U.S. citizen and you want to go in and use social services and there's three people ahead of you who don't speak English and they're not U.S. citizens. And up until now, people said, well, the Latino vote's always going to be Democratic, but I think you're starting to see in some of these congressional districts some kind of fissure there that people are saying, wait a minute, the Democratic Party doesn't represent me anymore. I don't have much in common with Dianne Feinstein or Nancy Pelosi that live in, enclaves or Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
I think that's something to watch. And then there's people in the Bay Area along the coast that are very liberal who can't buy a house.
Right.
Or if they do, they can't pay the taxes. Or they can't put their kids in a public school. And they're starting to get a little bit upset. And that hasn't materialized yet to a political movement. But you see things like the Cox getting on the ballot in California is pretty rare.
I think that just to build on your point, I think that we are seeing other manifestations of that. Number one, we have probably are going to see qualified for the November ballot a tax, a gasoline tax increase revocation. So there's a bill that's going to get rid of that gas tax and roll it back. That's huge.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and that represents it. And also, and that's been one of our signature issues, along with pension reform. And most importantly, we are firm advocates and very active in supporting school choice, which we think has broad appeal to everybody, legal, illegal, Latino, black, anybody stuck in the middle class. If they can get control of their children and their education, they might have a shot at controlling the children's future. What are your feelings about school choice, Doctor?
Well, I think most Californians support it, and they understand that it gives a little equity to the middle and poor classes. And by that I mean that if you're very liberal and you're a magnate in Silicon Valley, we're starting to see up in that area, whether it's Harker School or Menlo School or Castillejo or Sacred Heart, that these private schools are just expanding exponentially.
Yes.
And it's serving the needs of a very left-wing, very wealthy elite that advocate teachers' union, no school choice, but they won't dare put their kids in very fine schools like Palo Alto or Menlo Atherton, and the same is true in Santa Monica and other places. So
that's correct.
What the middle classes are saying is, well, all these people who won't let us have charter schools or won't question the teachers' union, they don't want to put their kids with our kids in school.
That's right.
Because that's sort of a disdain, and that feeds into a larger narrative that, you know, they want high-speed rail, but they don't want it to be first put in San Francisco or L.A.
That's
or
right.
They want high electricity rates, but it's pretty much 70 degrees along the coast. It's not 110.
Right.
Or they want high gasoline taxes, but they're urban people that don't drive 50 miles a day to work.
That's right. Plus the cost of pumping water on the
same thing
forms.
with water.
Yeah.
Same thing with water. People are saying, why is it that they don't want to build another dam to get California more water, or they want to divert the water we have, send it out to San Francisco Bay? But on the other hand, they don't touch the California Aqueduct or Hetch Hetchy that brings their water to L.A. or to San Francisco. So they want to cut off everybody's water. They want to save fish, but they don't dare take one drop out of the Hetch Hetchy reservoir that goes directly into San Francisco, because they don't live by the ramifications of their own ideology. So
That's
it's
right.
always, you do this, but we're so noble that we're exempt from these consequences. And I think people are getting really sick of them.
I think so, too.
I don't know how that's going to translate politically, but it's starting to say that we don't really believe what a Stanford professor or a Hollywood actor or a Facebook executive tells us anymore in a way that we did, say, 20 years ago or 10 years ago.
That's right. Yeah, they're losing their credibility. Plus, they have access to other opinion, not only on radio, but particularly through the Internet. Our best guess as to how this political disaffection, this cleavage between the average voting Democrat, the average voting family, and their representatives in the Democrat Party, and even over on the Republican Party, they're not very often not much better than the Democrats. We think that this cleavage will manifest itself in the initiative process if these average Californians, God bless them when I say the word average, the average family, and that was mine and yours growing up, has the opportunity to vote on issues rather than party. I think we'll see significant political progress in this state.
No, I agree. I think that people are not yet at the stage that they want to vote Republican because of cultural indoctrination, etc. But when they see things about let's stop sanctuary cities, or let's repeal the gas tax, or let's not fund high-speed rail, I think they'll vote in a very conservative way.
Totally with you. Dr. Hanson, I know you have to go. You've been very generous with your time, particularly on a Sunday night. I don't know what time zone you're in, but you've been generous, and we'd appreciate it. Now, if people, Doctor, would like to know more about you and your writings and your activities, where should they go to get more information?
I have a website, victorhansen.com.
Okay, victorhansen.com. You can go there, find out all his wonderful writings. Dr. Hansen is all over YouTube. I very often take the time in the car to listen to one of your lectures on some point or another, and highly recommend it to the audience. If you like what you heard here tonight, you're going to love his lectures even more. And by all means, pick up his books. And one of these times, as a fellow classicist, I look forward to reading and discussing with you The Other Greeks. When I looked at your Wikipedia article, I thought, well, that's one I missed, and I want to read that. So,
well, thank you.
I'm one of those guys that took Latin and Greek in high school and early in college as well. So I always appreciate your classical message there as well. It's lost. Doctor, thank you so much. Have a good evening, and we hope that we'll have the opportunity maybe to do this again.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right, sir. Take care. Good night. All right. We've been very fortunate to have Dr. Victor Davis Hansen on the radio with us.
Wow, that was really cool. I mean, he is a smart guy.
He really is. Yeah. When you listen to him, though, I mean, he has all the intellectual. Hey, Kevin, how many more minutes we got to go here? 2, 3? 2. He's wiggling 2 fingers at me there. Is that a peace sign or is? All right. We've got Kevin Figures here tonight. In any event, this man has all the intellectual credentials that he needs, and yet he studiously, purposely expresses himself in a very common and familiar way.
Very matter of fact.
Very matter of fact, very, very folksy, and I don't say that in any critical way, and it's not false on this part.
Yeah.
You got to know who this guy is. He's a guy who's a 2nd or 3rd generation farmer right there in Selma, right up in the, I think he's in Fresno County or pretty close, right in the Fresno area. His family has farmed for generations. We know these people. You know, he and his family are the heart of America. That's the other part that's forgotten in this entire discussion, and we have to listen to him. The other thing too is that he is a Californian.
Right.
All right. So he's not somebody who just grew up in another place and comes out here to pass judgment on us or to offer an opinion. And he's not a technocrat. So we'll get a lot of people who are born here in California, but they're really not so much California. They're not the result of their experience, but the result of their schooling and their so-called education. So they come out with a preset set of ideas that is immune to argument, immune to facts, immune to experience, or whatever. So, hey, look, that tinkle tinkle music that that Kevin is playing there is our sign that we're going into to our mid program break. This is Mike Alexander and Jonathan Wilson. Please come back and join us and be part of the show. That's at 866-870-5752. All right, back with you here. Mike Alexander, Jonathan Wilson, who's the editor of the Taxpayer Gazette. We're going to talk a little bit more about what we're doing on the Gazette here a little bit later. Right now, we want to go back and recap some of the election results with you. We love to hear from you. What did you think of Dr. Hansen? Do you agree or disagree? Let me just recap the major points that came through. He identified, as he does so well, a catalog of things that are wrong here in the state of California that might be summarized as follows. A complete breach of faith, an unbridgeable growing gap between the values of the average family and the values of the political, business, and government elites that run this state. They've lost faith, whether it's the cost of electricity, the cost of a house, you rent, the terrible schools. Where's the future? Where's the gold in California? Well, I know where the gold is, of course. It's in public employees' pockets. It's in the pension plan. It's in the pockets of the big contractors and the consultant class and all these other people who profit from local and state government on a magnificent level. That's where the gold is. It's just no longer a possibility for the average family. I remember when I say I recall my father telling me that he came out here from Missouri in 1939. He hitchhiked to the New York World's Fair back in 1939 and then turned around and went back out to California. He just graduated from high school in Laclede, Missouri. And when he got out here to California, he loved it. He stayed here. He went to work here. And when World War II came around, he enlisted here and put this as his home address. Before he went back home to say goodbye to his parents, he came out here and had his home address, home of record, is Orchard Avenue, I think, in Los Angeles. And he did that because he wanted to be discharged here. If he made it through the war, he wanted to be discharged back in California. And thank God that's exactly what happened after 52 missions over Europe. He managed to make it back. He came here. He met my mom. They made their home here. And that describes so many people, whether it was the Okies coming here to California for agricultural jobs and for manufacturing jobs. There was so much migration from the South to Los Angeles for manufacturing jobs during the war. All those folks stayed. That's the story of so many neighborhoods here. We continue to have hundreds of thousands, millions of people from other countries even. We call them illegal aliens. We call them many things, sometimes legal aliens and citizens and all this sort of thing. But they get here, and these promises are not met. It is no longer the Golden State. Now, for a certain elite, yes. If you manage to make it to the top of tech or in a few elite professions in finance or whatever, that's great. But there's no longer a job to be had at the General Motors factory in Southgate, California, because that factory's been gone for 30 years. More than that, probably more like 40 now. It's just plain gone. And this is repeated time after time. And whatever manufacturing is left, whether it's aerospace or anything else, we've got bureaucrats and idiots from the elite schools in our state and elsewhere who are running around the state trying to regulate it out of existence. It's so bad that you can't paint an airframe in the state of California. You can build it here, then you've got to tow it to Arizona to paint the damn thing, and then bring it back here and maybe try to finish it off. That's the story of the California aerospace industry. We just do engineering, very high value-added things. Look at agriculture. We shut people's water off. We raise electricity rates. One thing that we're talking with Dr. Hansen there about was not only what it costs to air condition a home in the Central Valley, but you also pump water out there. What water you actually get, you've got to pump. And I know farmers who've had to go without a lot of things in order to pay the power bill so that they could pump water to keep their crops growing. You don't think of electricity as being essential to crop growth. You think about water, but you don't think about the fact that you have to pump that water. Those are electric pumps. They're very expensive, and you got to buy the water from the state. So we have elites at the federal and the local level who have made life hell for the average homeowner, the average factory worker, and they're looking around and wondering, how in the world do we get ahead? It's very dispiriting. And all the people that came here from other countries hoping to have a future, legally or otherwise, I'll leave the legal status of these foreigners to the side for right now, but they came here. Well, I don't know how many people came here for just the welfare benefits. I'll wager you that a lot of them didn't come just for the welfare benefits, but having gotten here, that's really all that they have to look forward to are the welfare benefits. This is outrageous, and the Republican Party has missed this. The Democrat Party just doesn't care, despite their professed concern about the little guy and the family. They don't care about families, and the Republicans are so chicken, so cowardly, so timorous, so I have to be careful. All right. Without intestinal fortitude, right? That they leave these issues lying about, and they allowed their entire party to be dismantled systematically to the point where we didn't even, there were some races we didn't even have top two. It is absolutely outrageous.
So do you think what we're seeing last Tuesday, is this the beginning of the backlash?
Yeah, you know.
Kind of feels like that.
Well, let me not call it the beginning of a backlash. If you're saying this may be the first time you've seen some palpable expression of it in California electorally, you might be right. But it is not, of course, the beginning of a backlash. You and I have been involved with the Tea Party here in California since 2009. Mm-hmm. There was plenty of backlash then. There was plenty of backlash before that time. What we are starting to see now is maybe a little coalescence. Mm-hmm. Maybe as Dr. Hanson,
all moving in the same direction.
A bit, yeah. In other words, it begins with a recognition that the people to whom you gave your vote for so long have broken faith with you. Mm-hmm. They're frauds.
Right.
You know, once that gets broken, it's very hard to put back together again in politics. And so no matter what these guys say, your schools never improve. No matter what they say, the cost of gasoline goes up.
Roads never improve.
They don't. And they run around saying, hey, look, don't worry, man. You know, if you don't have enough money, I'll go get it from Wilson or Alexander, you name the guy, right? Only they never really seem to go steal enough money from us to make their lives work. And that's because there isn't enough money in this world to do it. Right. Only a working, functioning economy with a good school system is capable of doing that. That's all there is to it. You must. There's just no other way to do it. You know. Let's see. It's 8:42. We've got a caller on the line here, George from Los Angeles. George, what say you? What's your comment here, my friend?
Well, Dr. Hanson talked about a lot of things happening in the state.
Yeah.
And the thing that really struck me was the historical battle between the North and the South concerning water. Mm-hmm. And this legacy of Jerry Brown, who is an admitted liar. I heard a radio interview after his first 2 terms in office where he said, "Oh, I guess I won't have to lie again. I don't have to lie anymore." Well, he wants this train, the train to nowhere, the bullet train to nowhere. And if all of these farmers on the west side of the Sierra had those huge concrete underground reservoirs catching the rain, catching the melt-off, the runoff, from the winter snows, and if those of us down here in the South could have some enriched flow on our aqueduct from the Hetch Hetchy project, which is so huge and is not really utilized to its fullest. It would be amazing. But you see, we have these progressivists that think about, we have all this climate change, all of this, pollution and everything.
Sure.
And yet, we have only been here and been a force on this planet for 50,000 years, and they don't talk anything about magmatic flow beneath the crust of the Earth. They don't talk about anything about the increasing sun, flare and this sun, actual material, that is coming out and could actually boil all the oceans on the Earth. They don't. They don't talk about any of this.
Sure, there's a tremendous variation in solar output from sometimes year to year or from century to century. George, I want to thank you for participating. When we come back after this message, I'm going to respond a little bit to what George said. This is Mike Alexander, Jonathan Wilson, Radio Free Los Angeles, radiofreelosangeles.net. Go there, be a participant, be a supporter, and be part of this show. We love having you tonight. We'll be back after the break with more from on the elections. All right, this Mike Alexander, Jonathan Wilson back with you. Love for you to be part of our program. Jonathan, we're up on Facebook, are we not?
Yeah, that's right. We have a Facebook Live video, so you can see us here in the studio doing the show. If you go to Facebook and search Radio Free Los Angeles, you can find this beautiful video.
Great. Yeah, be there. It's a great place to submit questions, too. Sometimes we have guests that are on you can't get through, or we're not able to take you. You can put a quick question out there. I want to respond just a little bit. We had George here on before the break talking about politicians and their contradiction with the truth. It was interesting. Jerry Brown saying that if he wasn't running for governor, he wouldn't have to lie anymore. That was the lie. If any of you are on Netflix, I think Hillary Clinton's America, that's Dinesh D'Souza's production, I think that's back on the on Netflix. It might be Amazon Prime, but just look it up, Hillary Clinton's America. And in there, Dinesh D'Souza describes his own experience with the penal system after they put people in, put him in jail for his various sins, errors, and omissions. And one of the most important things was when he was talking with this guy who was a con man. I won't go into the whole setup there. Go watch the program; it's fantastic. But Dinesh D'Souza asked this guy who was in jail for the con. He says, "Well, what happens when you get busted?" And your con is found out. He said, "What do you do?" And he says, "Nothing. Whatever you do, never drop the con. And when you get caught, you really, really never drop the con."
Sounds like the Clintons.
The Clintons, it sounds like Jerry Brown.
Yeah.
Never drop the con. That's,
right.
Of course, sounds like the Clintons. That's why it was Hillary Clinton's America. That's the whole idea. Well, he's the same way. So you say these people are wrong. No, it's not that they're wrong. They are lying. Most of what passes for government and public policy is a fraud, a hustle, and a con. Almost everything that they say about race, everything that they say about the economy, everything that they say about public policy or legal immigration, almost everything that they say is not only a lie, it is not only wrong, it's a deliberate, knowing, intentional misrepresentation. They're not just wrong about science, folks. They know they're wrong, and they say it anyway because they want the outcome. And if there's any single mistake that conservatives make in California, in the United States, and in fact, the world discourse dealing with these socialist liars, it is the idea that somehow there's a set of ideas, some facts that we can get to them that will make a big difference. And suddenly when we educate them about the distinctions of solar output and all the many times that we've had ice ages, mini ice ages, maxi ice ages, and God knows how many other times and how many other civilizations rose and fell in the dust and the core of what we call the earth. We'll never know. But no matter what it is, they are never repudiated because they don't care what the answer is. They're going to say what they need to say in order to get the outcomes that they want. That's why it makes almost no sense to ever talk with a liberal. You just have to beat them. You got to defeat them. That's what we're all about here, the California Taxpayers Union. They just keep saying, I'm going to get back to more of that later. Right now, I've got Dave in Orange County, and this guy has not one, not two, not three, not 6 or 7. He has 5 things that are feeding the beast in California. Dave, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right, walk us through it, man.
Okay, now my thesis on how to deal with it is Jerry Brown's own comment, which he revealed his true self at the Union Station speech a couple weeks ago. He said, I love vicious politics. I love negative campaigning. I've been doing it all my life. That's an actual quote, folks.
Sure.
Now, Republicans may take election from him. Let's do it ourselves. Besides that, back around shortly after the presidential election in 2008, USA Today front page article: negative campaigning works.
Yes.
$10 billion spent in the campaign, and most of it was negative campaigning. Now, here you go. Here's my negative campaigning. 5 things, and one of them is your big deal, guy, Mike, and it's really good. Okay, for number 1, sanctuary city. Now, this needs to be messaged, okay, to the voters. Number 1, the gas tax. Number 2, sanctuary cities. Number 3, what is it? It's the big water deal, okay? They want to pass these restrictions on us. Well, hey, guess what, sir? Brown, you're not building water storage. Message that.
Right.
Number what? Am I number 4? The pension.
Right.
The pensions, okay? So we have these 4 things. That's 4 things there, okay? Message it. And what do? We need to execute that without making mistakes. Number 2, we need to focus the message on the important issues right there, and we'll win them. We'll beat them, Mike.
Yeah, I totally agree. And these are issues which have little or nothing to do
Mike,
with...
I forgot. There was 5, yes.
Okay, cinco. Número 5 es que?
The 5th one, which is probably the number 1 issue. Okay, let's take a campaign statement from Villaraigosa. Nothing matters unless you're safe. Hey,
yes.
The crime issue. Crime is totally out of control here because of the Democrats. Hey, Mike, guess who created Prop 47? I did research. The Democrats, Mr. District Attorney of San Francisco, and down there, guess the Stanford Justice Advocacy Project, Stanford University organization helped write 47.
Right.
And that guy, Gascon, the district attorney of San Francisco, a big Democrat, I found out his party affiliation. He filed it with a guy down in San Diego, the former police chief of San Diego.
Right. Now, Dave, I think knocking Democrats around like piñatas is just a lot of fun. Right.
Oh, yes,
However, I've got another one hanging in here, and it's got Jim Brote's name on it. Let us not, and a lot of elite Republicans in this state, we have to speak the truth about these things among ourselves before we start directing too much fire at the other side. The Republican Party in this state knows all of these issues, should be pursuing them. It should be rebuilding its party. They should have seen to it that the top two was repealed. They should have seen to it. They should be working now on redistricting. But as a matter of fact, they're doing nothing of that. And their primary goal here in the state of California is to make sure that all political capital leaves the state for other races, whether it's the Senate, the House, or some other presidential candidate other than Donald Trump. The Republicans have deliberately abandoned and in fact drowned the party. It's just awful.
Well,
and what that leaves
there's a
us.
Billionaire guy, Mike, that he's a so-called Republican, and I heard about him from John Paul White. He's a big, awesome activist. Keep Orange Red. Check that out on Facebook. That's our group. Now, he told me about this guy who absolutely spends billions of dollars going after conservatives, and you can get the name of that guy from John Paul White if you contact him at Keep Orange Red. But this guy killed going in the open primary. There was a bid to do that at the convention, and that guy
Munger,
spent a lot of
Charlie
money.
Munger.
You're talking about Charlie Munger?
Jr.
Charlie Munger the Younger. Yes, we've talked about him here before. Yeah, let's go back to your 5 things, though, Dave. And you're right. These are 5 basic issues. And by the way, with your permission, I will add a 6th, and that is school choice. And I'm going to talk more about this here, this evening in other ways. But what could be more effective than to go to Black and Latino and people with no money, white, pink, purple, Asian, Filipino, you pick your favorite minority and so forth, whatever it is, however it is that you see people, but you go to families and you tell them, look, the key to you getting ahead is at least to obtain minimum literacy, minimum facility in the language so that your children can go as far as their talents will let them so that they can get a job, learn a skill that will let them do something, and then we go to work on those other 5 things to make sure that there's some jobs and some opportunities here.
And Mike, let's create packs to get that message out. Go to yourpoliticalwings.com, and I'll show anybody how to start a non-connected political action committee.
Yeah.
A state PAC or a federal PAC, but we need state PACs to raise the money and get that message out in mailers and radio ads on that education issue and others.
Hey, send us a message over there on Facebook, or what's our email address?
HQ@catlc.net.
Good. Send us a note there at catlc.net. That'll get to me, or Mike at CaliforniaTaxpayersUnion.org. This is Mike Alexander, Jonathan Wilson. We'll see you after 9 o'clock. We got a great half-hour planned for you. See you then. All right. Back with you here, Mike Alexander. Thank you, Basil Hoffman. What does he call himself? Our unpaid
he's
spokesman?
Our unpaid announcer.
Unpaid announcer. And he is unpaid. He does this voluntarily. Basil, if you're listening, we do appreciate it. You really take it to a new level.
Isn't
there.
that voiceover in that open just great?
It's amazing.
Yeah, he nailed it.
Hey, he's a pro. That's why they pay him. It's amazing. We're just delighted to number him not only among our supporters but friends. We have a really big family that has grown up here over the last 9 years. A lot of us know each other, and we've, in many cases, literally watched each other's children grow up, go to school, some of them getting married, having children of their own. It's just really been a special time. And, that reminds me of what our real theme here is, because when we gather at the California Taxpayers Union, we talk about these themes. The one thing that keeps coming back, the one single theme, and I hate to call it a theme because it's not just something that we select because it works. It's something that we know and feel and live and breathe, and that's called family. The family is still the core building block of society. It is, in fact, Thomas Aquinas characterized it as a perfect society in and of itself, a mother and a father and children, perfectly ordered. And all of society's claims or system of government can be measured by the extent to which it helps the family to grow, to survive. If it threatens the family or interferes with it, then it must be judged as wanting and perhaps even evil. And when we look at modern, massive, totalitarian governments, we see that their values and their actions and their claims are inimical to the family. In fact, often inimical to life itself, by deliberately taking aim at the unborn, by undermining the roles of the parents, which are primary in the education and moral formation of their children. And nowhere is this more readily on display than in our modern social policies. Divorce is rampant, and it's facilitated and supported by the government. It separates fathers from families, separates them, therefore, from society. They marry women, they have children by them, and then either withdraw from those children or are driven away by the mothers and facilitated by the state. And so now all of a sudden the state is in there supporting their children, and they may or may not like that. Many of them like it, and then they minimize their payments. And then in those cases, they hand those kids to me. So I've got all these kids out there on welfare that I'm supporting. I didn't even get kissed, and now I'm paying support for all of these kids. But it's bad for the children. It's bad for the mothers. It's bad for the fathers, too, because they don't have any say. They're just strangers in their own families.
Well,
it's
isn't
terrible.
The family is a threat to the left, isn't it?
Yes, because it has its own legitimate demands.
Right.
And they want to subordinate everything to the collective. Now, that reminds me of something. I subscribe to a number of newsletters, and one of them is I think, Moynihan's Journal. This is Robert Moynihan. He is a conservative Catholic columnist who writes on a number of subjects. And one of them that he chose to write on here yesterday mentioned the 40th anniversary of Alexander Solzhenitsyn's speech to the Harvard graduating class in 1978. And what was remarkable, we all of us of a certain age remember back to the 60s and 70s when Solzhenitsyn was persona non grata. He had been put in the gulag, imprisoned. They chased this guy all over Europe because he was speaking out against the regime. And, of course, the West liked his criticism of the Soviet Union. He was the guy who really popularized the word Gulag Archipelago. Remember, that was the name of one of his books, First Circle. There was a number of them that he wrote in a number of articles. So he was a trenchant critic of the Russian state. Finally, as part of Glasnost and in a perestroika and a bunch of these other things, Solzhenitsyn made his way to the United States and ended up in Vermont, living up there in a suitably cold environment, where he continued to write. And he would receive innumerable requests to go speak here, there, and everywhere. Well, he went down to Harvard 40 years ago this month and gave a speech which proved to be as controversial here as what he had said in Russia was controversial there. And here, Solzhenitsyn took on the claims, or I should say the evils of Western society, which had rejected the spiritual, which had rejected the divine, which had embraced the materialism of the Enlightenment, which had rejected the medieval focus on the soul or the spirit to the exclusion of man's bodily existence, which is part of man's nature, both soul, mind, soul, body, intellect, everything together, and so the Enlightenment, which we embrace for so many reasons, particularly the emergence of individual freedom, the idea of constitutional government, John Locke, one of the great writers of the Enlightenment, there were evils that flowed from that. We see that in modern society in its industrial expression can often be just as dehumanizing as socialism is. And so he spoke about all of these things. It became very controversial, and he took no end of grief from all the people. Said, well, a little gratitude might be in order. Well, this is it was an intellectual of the first rank, and of course he was going to offer legitimate criticism here and there. You may want to take a look at that. We're going to try to link Solzhenitsyn's June 2018 address because it's a good one for us to keep in mind as we take on the collectivist government, to bear in mind that there are evils in capitalism as well. In the market-based system, it can leave people behind. There's a lot to say on that in the debate. I won't get into it, but here's one quote that Robert Moynihan, who wrote this newsletter here, I'll just read it for you. Media as unelected arbiters of our society and culture. That's the headline. Solzhenitsyn called out the carelessness and superficiality, quote, which he'd referred to as, quote, psychic diseases of the 20th century, close quote, that he saw in the Western press. Obviously, when journalism becomes propaganda, we're in deep trouble. He stated, quote, this is Solzhenitsyn speaking at Harvard, the press has become the greatest power within the Western countries, exceeding that of the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Yet one would like to ask, according to what law has it been elected, and to whom is it responsible? Close quote. Got 1 minute to go here. An extraordinary. So he said, let's read that again. He referred to he called out the carelessness and superficiality of the Western press, referring to it as psychic diseases of the 20th century. Boy, do we know them, yeah? Yeah, the psychic diseases. The press has become the greatest power within the Western countries, exceeding that of the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Yet one would like to ask, according to what law has it been elected, and to whom is it responsible?
Wow.
Yeah, we're going to pick that up on the other side and talk about that, and I want to add a few things to that. This is Mike Alexander, Jonathan Wilson. Be part of the show. Call us at 866-870-5752 or go to radiofreelosangeles.net. Make a contribution. Connect with us on
Facebook.
Almost said YouTube. All right, thanks. See you in a minute. And it went down from there. All right, Mike Alexander and Jonathan Wilson back with you here. Jonathan was just regaling with tales of Old Town last night. Yeah, call us, be part of the program here. Let me know what you think. 866-870-5752. So in the last, at the end of the last segment, I read you a little passage there from Solzhenitsyn, who 40 years ago was stating that the press had become the most powerful institution in the West with an unaccountable power. And that certainly seems to be accurate. But I would like to supplement Solzhenitsyn's observation. I would like to add to that. And I don't understand why he did not include it, but I would like to add to his observation the public so-called school, so-called system and all of its other manifestations at the collegiate level and so forth. These people too have an incredible acclaim. They make an absolutely unchallenged claim to control what people learn, to control what people think, to affect them politically, and then even to electioneer them. We know that this goes on in public schools all the time, where they have their go-home bags that will have political literature, particularly on local issues that affect the public schools and bond issues or the local city. We in the California Taxpayers Union have seen this kind of illegal electioneering take place in the public schools repeatedly. It happens all the time because, as you know, referring back to Principia Politica, number 2, every public employee is a paid partisan political activist. They're all there to help carry out Principia Politica number 1, and that is the first duty of government is to grow itself. That's what they do. They're out there. And so we see that the public school as well as the press have been harnessed in the service of this great vision. Now, I'm not 100% sure exactly what it is that Solzhenitsyn was finding fault with about the press. I assume that he felt that it wasn't sufficiently critical of Western civilization, of the West.
Was this in 1978?
Yeah,
okay.
1978.
Okay.
So, I mean, he is certainly, he'd written entire books about the Soviet system, and he gives one speech at Harvard here, and all of a sudden, he's the bad guy in the view of a lot of conservatives. I remember that speech. I remember the controversy back then, not in a lot of detail, but I've always had a very positive view of Solzhenitsyn. I thought he was an honest man. I mean, I don't think that we think that our society is perfect, and there's ways in which we can critique it. I think that there's more to life. There must surely be more to life than material possessions or professional achievements. There has to be more than that. But yet our society very often gets organized differently. Not only does the communist system exclude God and spirituality, but a very materialistic market economy can end up doing the same things.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we see it all the time. Theoretically, the networks in Hollywood are quite free. They operate in a free, very competitive marketplace, but yet they make choices to literally sell consumption on their television shows. They sell sex. They sell a certain vision of man, of woman, of children, of the family. I think these are quite legitimate criticisms, and aren't these same critiques offered by good preachers on Sunday all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's ironic to hear people reacting against Solzhenitsyn's criticism of a market economy, loosely called capitalism. But it's remarkable to hear those criticisms. But not just this pope, but every pope has criticized the materialistic aspects of consumerism, the hedonistic aspects of society. And what's really interesting is that it is Islam very often, these jihadis, who have very similar criticisms of American society.
Right.
Who see us as excessively consumed with sex, materialism, a rejection not only of Allah, but a rejection of the divine.
Right.
And aren't they at some level right?
Oh, yeah.
I
think they're going about it the wrong way.
I think so. Yeah, those bomb vests are a problem.
Yeah.
But But it is remarkable at a distance of 40 years to listen to Solzhenitsyn's critique there.
Wonder what he would think now.
Oh, well,
I think it's gotten worse, don't you?
Yeah, do you realize that he just died 10 years ago?
Oh, did he really?
He was 90 years old. We saw him around forever, but he made it to 90. Can you imagine a guy going through all of that pain and punishment, and he still made it to 90?
Wow, tough genes.
Oh, yeah, those tough Ruskies, man. I'll tell you, boy, they're an amazing group of people. In any event, going back a little bit, sorry if we waxed too philosophical there, because, but it's a good time to take a shot and remind everybody that we're not here about electoral politics. This is not about Republicans going out and beating the stuffing out of Democrats, or just winning elections. All of this has a purpose, and when we talk about our purposes here, right in our announcement: free men, free markets, limited constitutional government. Those are all expressions of liberty. Mm-hmm. Those are all expressions of our support for principles that allow families to exist and to thrive. And if we have an economy or social arrangements that don't allow families to provide for themselves, but rather force them into this whole socialist paradigm, well, we're just done. Hey, I've talked too much, and we've got. Hey, are you awake in there, Kevin? We're going to do Government Grifter of the Week
Award. It's been a couple weeks. We haven't done this in a while.
Music, maestro, please.
And now, live from Glendale, California, it's this week's Government Grifter Awards. And, Mike, we've got some great nominees this week.
All right.
They come from just next door in the city of Arcadia.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, so... we've got so many good ones. I'm just going to kind of rapid fire, and you can comment.
Have an embarrassment of riches here.
So we get this information, just to remind you, from TransparentCalifornia.com.
Yes.
And these are 2016 total pay and benefits.
Wow.
So the first nominee, I've just got to start at the top.
Yep.
City manager. Making $309,000 a year total pay and benefits.
That's a city mismanager,
right.
Folks.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we go down. I love this title. I'm sorry. That was Freudian. Chief Deputy City Clerk. Now,
that
what
means
is
there's
that?
more. That means a city clerk and a deputy clerk, and there's more. And he's the chief, so there's more than one.
The Chief Deputy City Clerk.
Yeah.
Total pay and benefits $154,000 a year.
Oh my God. How much does the clerk make?
Let's see. It's not on my list here.
Way too much. I'll wager that. Just a deputy, 150 a year. Amazing.
So, do you have any nominees you'd like to?
Well, we got. Here's we have all these cockroaches over in the library there. We got the director of library museum.
I knew
services.
you were going to like that.
214. I'm just going to go. They got a budget. Library services manager, 152,000. Principal librarian. They've got 3 of them. Each of them make 136 to 138 a year. Then a half a dozen of them. It looks like they've got the better part of $1 million in salaries going into the library there in the wealthiest. One of the wealthiest communities around. Just absolutely.
I've got another one for you. Deputy Fire Chief.
Yeah.
Not the fire chief, the deputy.
Yeah, $289,000.
Amazing.
Well, hey,
I tell you
what, get your blindfold out, get a dart out.
All righty.
And no matter where you hit.
Do you have the envelope? Is the envelope over here somewhere?
Yeah, I got an envelope here.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
All right.
There we are. What is it?
And the winner of this week's Government Grifter Awards from the city of Arcadia is the Chief Deputy City Clerk.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
Congratulations, Chief Deputy City Clerk.
Hey, if you're listening out there and I send you emails, so be sure to open up the email and come see us and call in here because we want to know what you do for that kind of money. All right. Hey, you need to know what's being taken. This is why rates are high. and taxes are through the ceiling. And every time you turn around, they're nicking you for another nickel, another dime. And by the time you're done with it, you know, just for the tax increase on gas alone, the average family in the state of California is paying over $700. That initiative, over 1 million signatures were submitted to the various county registrars around the state. We have absolutely no doubt that is going to be on the ballot in November, and this is going to be the opportunity that each of us needs to say no to government, to take back that badly needed money. You know, I was out today and going to Mass, where we go every week. I'm telling you, the freeway was almost empty this morning. And it wasn't just Sunday morning. The time we go, it's usually heavy traffic. And certainly by the time we come back at 1:30 in the afternoon, I usually can't get through that Ventura 134 eastbound transition without waiting 10 or 15 minutes. And we sailed right through. I'm telling you, gas prices are so high, the families are staying home. You just can't get in the car, go take a ride, go to the beach, go take in a movie. You got no money left over because they're grabbing that $700. Now, to them, it's $700, you know, but to a lot of families, that $700, that's $50 or $100 that they could take some gas. They can take the kids to the movies and do things. But to the people who aren't family-oriented or who are so wealthy that they've forgotten that, you know, that $100 is like a coupon to them, oh, it's a lot of money to people. Well, we're getting right down to the end. He's got the music going.
Another great show, Mike.
Hey, well, thanks very much. Thank you, Dr. Hanson, for coming on. This is Mike Alexander, Jonathan Wilson, Radio Free Los Angeles, RadioFreeLosAngeles.net. Go there, be a friend and supporter of listener-sponsored, citizen-sponsored radio. See you next week.